When Captain Leah Donovan came back to Ohio after 15 years of service, she expected quiet mornings, black coffee, and the kind of peace you only get after too many years of sand, steel, and orders shouted across radios. What she didn't expect was a call from her younger sister, Ava, the one person she'd practically raised after their parents died, and the same person who hadn't visited her once during her last 2 deployments. Ava's voice on the phone was cheerful. A little too cheerful. "Leah, I have the best news. I'm getting married." Leah smiled, even though she was standing in a half-unpacked living room surrounded by boxes stamped with "Property of U.S. Army." "That's great, kiddo. Who's the lucky guy?" "Evan Whitford," Ava said, as if the name alone should have meant something. "His family's in real estate. Old money. It's going to be beautiful at the Whitford estate in Connecticut." Leah didn't need Google to know what kind of people owned estates in Connecticut. Still, she kept her voice warm. "I'll be there. Tell me what you need." There was a pause on the line, soft but sharp. "Well, about that, things are expensive. The venue alone is nearly $400,000. But don't worry, I'll pay you back." Leah laughed. "Ava, it's a wedding, not a moon landing. How many people are you inviting?" "About 300. Maybe 350. It's important, Leah. The Whitfords, they move in certain circles." Leah understood. Certain circles. She'd spent years surrounded by generals, politicians, and contractors, who all played their own version of the same game, power through appearances. "I'll cover it," she said simply. "Are you serious?" "I said I would. Just send me the paperwork." That was how Leah Donovan, combat veteran, logistics officer, and woman who'd once led a supply convoy through a live fire zone, ended up financing a wedding that could have paid for an entire platoon's worth of new armored vehicles. She justified it to herself. Ava had been 12 when Leah signed up for the Army. Leah had sent home every extra dollar she could, paid for Ava's high school, college, and later her first apartment. Helping with the wedding was just another form of protection. Another mission. Leah arrived in Greenwich 3 months later. She parked her black pickup beside a row of Range Rovers and Mercedes at the Whitford property, a sprawling colonial mansion framed by white oaks and a driveway long enough to need its own zip code. The staff at the gate took one look at her military plates and tried to redirect her to the service entrance. She smiled politely and drove straight past them. Inside, she found Ava standing with a group of women in pastel dresses, all holding champagne flutes and laughing about flower arrangements. Ava looked like she belonged in a lifestyle magazine, tall, perfect posture, diamond on her hand catching the afternoon light. When she saw Leah, her face lit up, for about half a second. Then it shifted into something rehearsed. "Leah, you made it!" The group turned to look. Leah could feel their silent measurements, the short hair, the tan lines, the faint scar along her temple from a convoy accident years ago. She wasn't the kind of woman who looked at home in silk or heels. "This is my sister," Ava said, waving her hand like she was introducing a vendor. She's in logistics." Leah gave a small nod. "Military logistics. 20 years. "Oh, wow," one of the bridesmaids said, with a smile that could have been printed on a Hallmark card. "That's so brave." "Note," Ava quickly redirected. "Anyway, we were just finalizing the menu with the caterer. Leah, can we talk later?" Leah didn't mind being dismissed. She'd been dismissed by people with a lot more rank and a lot less reason. Still, the tone stung. Ava's laughter followed her as she walked toward the back patio, the same way machine gun fire used to echo through the desert. Sharp, repetitive, impossible to ignore. She spent the next hour with the wedding planner, a woman named Chloe who carried a clipboard like it was a holy text. Chloe spoke to Leah with exaggerated politeness once she realized who was paying the bills. "Yes, Captain Donovan, we've received your initial transfer of $400,000. The remaining balance of $395,000 will be due 1 week before the ceremony." "Good," Leah said, signing the final authorization. "You'll get it on time. Just make sure my sister gets the day she wants." "Of course," Chloe replied, then hesitated. "May I ask, will you be attending the reception as a guest or part of the planning team?" Leah looked up from the document. "I'm her sister," she said flatly, "not her staff." That night, Leah stayed in a hotel outside town. Her military pension and the success of her new company, Donovan Logistics and Supply, meant she could afford a suite at the Ritz. But she chose a quiet roadside inn instead. Old habits die hard. She'd spent too many nights sleeping on cots and truck beds to care about thread count. She opened her laptop and checked the vendor emails. Catering, photography, music, floral design, every contract had her name, her signature, her account information. Every decision went through her. Ava might have been the bride, but Leah was the one keeping the engine running. When she closed her laptop, the silence hit her. Not the comforting silence of a safe base, this was the hollow kind, the one that comes after years of noise. For the first time, Leah realized how distant she and Ava had become. 15 years of letters and calls hadn't bridged the gap. Money had built a bridge of convenience, not connection. The next morning, Leah visited the estate again. Workers were setting up tents and lighting rigs. The Whitfords were walking the grounds, discussing seating charts with the confidence of people who'd never worried about a bank balance. Preston Whitford Sr., the patriarch, extended a hand to Leah. "You must be the army sister. Quite the sacrifice you're making for family. You must be proud." Leah shook his hand, steady but cool. "Pride's not really a word we use in the field. We focus on results." He smiled like he didn't quite understand the joke. "Well, you'll see. Everything will be perfect. My son deserves nothing less." "I'm sure he does," Leah said, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. As she watched them walk away, Leah realized that to this family, her role wasn't sister or veteran or even benefactor. She was an accessory, useful, invisible, and expected to stay that way. But Leah had learned something in 20 years of military service. Control doesn't come from shouting orders. It comes from knowing when to wait and when to act. And if Ava and her new in-laws wanted to underestimate her, that was fine. Because in logistics, the person holding the last piece of the supply chain always has the real power, and Leah Donovan had just decided she wasn't letting go of it. The sound of rain against the window made Leah wake before dawn. Years in the army had trained her to treat silence like a warning, not a comfort. She sat up, pulled her hair back, and checked her watch out of habit. 5:03 a.m. There were no orders waiting, no mission briefings, just the ghost of discipline that never left her. By 8, she was back at the Whitford estate. The place looked different in daylight. Gardeners were trimming hedges with surgical precision, and a dozen white tents stood half-assembled like a temporary base camp. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and money. Ava came down the stairs in a silk robe, holding a latte that probably had its own personal assistant. She smiled when she saw Leah, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're up early. You didn't have to come this soon. I like to see how things operate before they fall apart," Leah said, half joking. Ava frowned. "Leah, please. Not everything's a mission. Can't you just relax?" Leah studied her sister, perfectly styled hair, a faint tan, nails so polished they reflected the morning light. "Relaxing isn't something I'm trained for." "That's the problem," Ava muttered, turning away. "You never stop being the soldier. And you never stop pretending you're not the girl from Toledo who used to eat peanut butter sandwiches for dinner," Leah said quietly. Ava froze but didn't turn around. "That's not fair." "It's true," Leah replied. "And truth doesn't need to be fair." The silence between them thickened, heavy, and sharp. Leah watched as a pair of event planners approached Ava, speaking in quick, efficient tones about floral arrangements and table settings. Ava's voice changed instantly, lighter, polished, almost unrecognizable. The transformation was subtle but complete. Leah stepped aside and listened. This wasn't the little sister who used to sneak into her room to play cards when thunder scared her. This was someone performing a version of herself for a crowd that demanded perfection. When the planners left, Ava walked back over, pretending nothing had happened. "Leah, I really appreciate your help. Everyone's been talking about how generous you are." "Generous," Leah repeated. "Not family, just generous." "Don't twist it," Ava said, sounding irritated. "This is a big deal for me. The Whitfords are very traditional. Appearances matter." "Appearances always matter when you don't have substance," Leah said, then instantly regretted it. Ava's jaw tightened. "You think I'm shallow because I want a good life? Because I don't want to be stuck in the same cycle? I think you've forgotten who gave you a chance to break that cycle," Leah answered. For a long moment they just stared at each other. Ava finally broke the tension with a brittle laugh. "God, you sound like Dad." Leah didn't flinch. Someone has to. Now. By noon, Leah was sitting in the back garden with a cup of black coffee, watching the workers build the glass pavilion where the reception would take place. Every cable, every light, every plank reminded her of the forward bases she used to oversee, except this one was for a party, not survival. She couldn't shake the feeling that Ava's new life was built the same way. Temporary, fragile, one good storm away from collapse. Chloe, the wedding planner, approached again, smiling like a politician. Captain Donovan, I wanted to confirm tomorrow's vendor payments. We'll need your approval on catering, music, and transportation. Send the invoices to my assistant, Leah said. You'll have them approved by end of day. Chloe nodded, but curiosity flickered behind her professional smile. If you don't mind me saying, it's impressive how calm you are. Most families fall apart during wedding planning. Nye. Leah looked toward the mansion. Most families don't train for combat. The planner chuckled awkwardly, unsure if it was a joke. Later that afternoon, Leah attended the rehearsal dinner at Ava's request. The Whitfords had booked a private ballroom, downtown marble floors, chandeliers, waiters who moved like chess pieces. Leah wore a dark suit instead of a dress, mostly to avoid the whispered comments she'd started hearing. When she entered, Ava was already working the room, introducing her fiancé, Evan, to guests. He was polished, polite, and entirely forgettable. His handshake was soft, like he'd never carried anything heavier than a golf club. Ava's smile brightened when she saw Leah, that same practiced, pageant-perfect expression. Everyone, this is my sister Leah. She runs a supply company. Leah raised an eyebrow. Military logistics, she corrected. Evan's mother, Judith Whitford, extended her hand delicately. Ah, the army. How interesting. Her tone made interesting sound like a diagnosis. I can't imagine the discipline required. I suppose weddings are easy after all that? Leah smiled faintly. Compared to Baghdad? Yes, ma'am. A few guests laughed nervously. Judith didn't. Well, we're just so honored you could take time away from your work to join us. Artane. Wouldn't miss it, Leah said, even though she was already planning her escape route. Dinner was a study in discomfort. Conversations revolved around summer homes, private schools, and the kind of problems only the rich could invent. Leah kept quiet, focusing on her plate, while Ava floated through the crowd like she'd been born into it. At one point, Evan leaned over. You don't talk much, Captain. You must have 1,000 stories. Most of them end badly, Leah said without looking up. He laughed, unsure whether she was joking. Ava shot her a warning glance. By the time dessert arrived, Leah had counted 5 separate comments about her interesting background. The polite condescension was almost impressive in its consistency. As the evening ended, Ava hugged Leah goodbye at the entrance. The perfume was strong, almost artificial. You didn't have to come, Ava whispered. I know, Leah said. But I wanted to see the world you're building. Ava pulled back slightly. You don't approve. I don't need to approve, Leah replied. Just don't forget where you came from. Ava's expression hardened. I'm trying to move forward. Moving forward doesn't mean erasing the past, Leah said. It means owning it. Ava didn't answer. She turned away, already talking to one of the guests. Her voice light again, her laugh rehearsed. Leah walked out to her truck, the night air heavy with the smell of rain and wet pavement. The headlights from luxury cars cut through the darkness like searchlights. She started the engine and sat for a moment, watching her reflection in the rearview mirror, tired eyes, straight posture, a face that had seen too much to ever pretend. Somewhere deep down, she still believed Ava would come around, that this version of her polished, proud, pretending was temporary. But belief didn't change patterns. The Whitfords' world ran on illusion. Leah's world ran on accountability. The collision was inevitable. And as she drove away from the glittering ballroom, the storm that had been building between the Donovan sisters finally started to move in. The morning of the wedding felt like deployment day, everyone moving with nervous energy, pretending to be calm while quietly panicking under the surface. Leah arrived at the estate in uniform precision timing, wearing a navy suit that looked sharp but simple. She parked in the staff lot because the main entrance was jammed with limos and photographers. It didn't bother her. She'd spent years walking into chaos. Inside, the ballroom looked like something out of a magazine. White orchids draped from the chandeliers, Candles flickered against mirrored walls, and a string quartet tuned their instruments with that quiet arrogance musicians always seem to have. Leah scanned the crowd of planners and assistants running on caffeine and fear. The place had the same controlled frenzy as an operations center before a mission, except here, the stakes were ego, not survival. She found Ava near the dressing suite, surrounded by bridesmaids and makeup artists. Her sister's gown shimmered under the lights, a designer piece that cost more than Leah's truck. Ava's expression when she saw Leah was polite, restrained, almost professional. "Leah, you made it! Wow, you look formal," Ava said, giving her a once-over. "I figured combat boots might clash with the flowers," Leah replied. A few of the bridesmaids giggled. Ava didn't. "Listen, there's a lot happening today. Could you just keep things low-key? The Whitfords have a lot of guests. Some of them don't really get the whole military thing." "The whole military thing?" Leah repeated. "You mean sacrifice, discipline, and paying for this entire circus?" Ava's cheeks flushed. "Don't make this difficult, please. Just enjoy the day." "Owen." Leah looked at her for a long moment, then simply nodded. "It's your day, Ava." She walked out before her voice betrayed her. Years of training kept her face blank even as her chest tightened. She found a quiet corner near the catering prep area and poured herself some coffee. The waitstaff moved around her like ghosts, whispering into earpieces, balancing trays of champagne flutes. Leah caught a few glances, curious, then dismissive. She recognized the look. It was the same one new recruits gave older officers before learning who really ran the operation. At 4:30, the ceremony began. The orchestra swelled as guests filed into the garden, an endless stream of tailored suits and glittering jewelry. Leah took her assigned seat, table 22, near the back, behind a column where the view of the altar was partially blocked. Her name card said, "Miss L. Donovan," printed smaller than the rest. She sat quietly, hands folded, watching as Ava glided down the aisle like a queen. Cameras flashed. The guests sighed. The Whitfords smiled as though they were hosting royalty. Leah felt the familiar knot of pride and disappointment, the same feeling she'd had watching soldiers under her command succeed, but forget who'd trained them. When the vows ended and the crowd applauded, Leah joined in. Her clapping was steady, almost mechanical. She watched Ava kiss her new husband and beam at the cheering guests. For a brief moment, Leah hoped that maybe, just maybe, things would settle, that after the performance, they'd have a real conversation again. That hope lasted about 20 minutes. During cocktail hour, Leah approached the bar for a drink. A man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive watch stepped beside her. "Staff should use the service counter in the back," he said casually, not even looking at her. Leah turned toward him. "Good to know," she said. "You might want to pass that along to your security team too. They just waved me through." The man blinked, finally noticing her. "Oh, you're with the—" "I'm with the bride," Leah said flatly. He gave an awkward smile and wandered off. Leah took her drink and found a seat near the edge of the patio, watching as laughter and money flowed through the crowd like wine. People toasted to family, to new beginnings, to love that transcends class. Every phrase felt like a joke that only she understood. Then she heard it. One of Ava's friends, the tall blonde who'd laughed earlier, was telling a small group about Ava's incredible story. Her parents passed away when she was young and she practically raised herself, the woman said, voice full of admiration. "It's inspiring. She built this life from nothing." Leah's grip tightened on her glass. She waited, expecting Ava to correct her. Instead, Ava smiled modestly, sipping champagne as if the lie were a compliment she'd earned. Someone asked, "So who's that woman sitting by herself? The one in the suit?" Ava hesitated, then laughed softly. "Oh, that's just Leah. She's helping coordinate logistics, kind of like part of the event team." Laughter followed, light, casual, cruel. Leah felt every muscle in her jaw tighten. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her reaction. Years of command had taught her how to absorb pressure without showing it. But the sting cut deep. She stood and walked outside into the garden, the laughter still echoing behind her. The air was cool and sharp, and for a moment she let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed a text from the venue manager confirming the pending $520,000 payment scheduled for that night. One button could delay it. Another could cancel it entirely. Leah looked back through the glass wall at the crowd celebrating inside. Her sister, glowing under the chandeliers. Her name forgotten, her presence erased. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years fighting for a country that preached loyalty and respect, only to come home and find betrayal in her own bloodline. Dinner began shortly after, and Leah returned to her assigned table. The waiters served plates with silent precision. Across the room, the Whitfords made their rounds, shaking hands, posing for photos. When they reached Leah's table, the patriarch smiled stiffly. "You must be with the event staff," he said again, holding out a hand. "Actually, sir," Leah said, shaking it firmly, "I'm the one who signed your contracts." He blinked, then laughed as if she'd told a joke he didn't understand. "Ah, yes, of course, the logistics expert." He moved on. Ava followed close behind, not meeting Leah's eyes. The rest of the meal passed like a slow-motion insult. Guests traded stories about their careers, their vacations, their art collections. When someone asked Leah what she did, she said simply, "I solve problems." It was the truth, though none of them would ever grasp how much meaning that sentence carried. As the orchestra played and glasses clinked, Leah noticed something small but significant. The staff kept glancing her way. The venue manager, the catering lead, even the florist. They knew who she was. They knew whose name was on the checks. Respect didn't come from titles here. It came from signatures. Still, Ava avoided her all night. Not once did she come over to thank her, to share a moment, to acknowledge that everything around her existed because her sister made it possible. Leah stayed seated, calm and silent, the same way she used to during long nights in command tents waiting for reports from the field. She'd learned long ago that sometimes you don't stop a disaster, you let it finish building until it collapses on its own. And as she watched Ava laugh with her new family, Leah knew she wouldn't have to wait long. Leah stirred the melting ice in her drink, watching it spin like a slow clock counting down. The laughter from the ballroom sounded distant now, muffled by thick glass and privilege. She'd been humiliated before by insurgents, by superiors, by bureaucrats who thought medals were enough payment for sacrifice, but never by someone she'd once carried through every storm of her childhood. She left her half-empty glass on the table and walked outside to the parking lot. The night air was cool and smelled faintly of rain and cut flowers. Rows of luxury cars gleamed under the string lights, and she could see her pickup parked at the far end, an outsider among polished machines. She leaned against the hood and pulled out her phone. The notification was still there. Pending transfer $520,000. All it would take was one tap to stop it. Leah's thumb hovered over the screen, then lowered. Not yet. Revenge wasn't about impulse. It was about precision. And precision was something she'd built her entire career on. Inside, the music shifted to something louder, the kind of soundtrack people play when they're trying to drown out conscience. Through the glass doors, she saw Ava laughing with her new husband, holding champagne like it was proof she belonged there. Leah felt something colder than anger settle in. Control? The same quiet control that had kept her alive in Iraq convoys when everything went sideways. The same calm that let her guide frightened recruits through firefights. The same patience that made people underestimate her until it was too late. She went back inside and found Chloe, the wedding planner, standing by the bar checking her headset. "Miss Donovan," Chloe said quickly, straightening up. "Everything's going perfectly." "I know," Leah replied. "Just one adjustment. The final payment's being held for review. I'll release it once I confirm service quality." Chloe blinked. "Oh, of course. Yes, that's completely fine. We'll ensure everything meets your expectations." "I'm sure you will," Leah said, and walked away. By the time she returned to her table, the tone of the event had shifted. Staff whispered a little quieter when she passed. The catering manager nodded respectfully. A few vendors started glancing toward her like she was the one who could make or break the night, which, technically, she was. Leah sat down, crossed her legs, and watched. The military had taught her that control wasn't about volume. It was about presence. You didn't need to shout when everyone already knew who held the authority. An hour later, as dinner plates were cleared, Ava made her way over with that careful smile she used when trying to keep peace without acknowledging fault. "Leah, can I talk to you for a second?" she asked, lowering her voice. Leah looked up. Of course. They stepped outside into the hallway, away from the music. Ava's posture was stiff, not out of fear, but out of embarrassment. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry if things came off wrong earlier. I didn't mean to make you feel left out. You didn't make me feel left out, Leah said. You made me invisible. Ava flinched slightly. You're being dramatic. It's a wedding, Leah. There were a lot of people. I couldn't control what everyone said. Leah kept her tone even. You could control what you said. Oh, one. I was just trying to fit in, Ava said, the words tumbling out faster. You don't understand what it's like to walk into that world. They expect a certain image. I didn't want them to see me, Leah finished. You didn't want them to see me. Ava didn't answer. The silence said enough. Leah nodded slowly. Well, congratulations. They don't see me. They see a successful, sophisticated bride who built herself from nothing. Leah, please. Leah held up a hand. Relax. I'm not here to make a scene. Ava exhaled, relieved. Thank you. Just, let's get through tonight, okay? Leah smiled faintly. Oh, we will. She turned and walked back into the ballroom, calm and steady. Ava stayed behind, visibly shaken but trying to mask it before anyone noticed. Leah had seen that look before soldiers who realized too late that the situation was no longer in their control. Back inside, the dinner program began. Speeches, laughter, a slideshow of photos that somehow managed to exclude every image of the sisters together. Leah's childhood presence had been scrubbed from history, replaced with a curated fairy tale. The slideshow showed Ava's journey, from a scholarship student to a Manhattan art consultant to marrying into one of the wealthiest families in Connecticut. Not a single photo of the cramped apartment Leah had paid for, or the secondhand car she'd bought her sister for college, or the night she stayed up wiring money across time zones. Leah sipped her drink and stayed quiet. Let them rewrite history. It only made the truth hit harder when it finally landed. When the servers came around to refill glasses, one of them, a young guy, maybe 20, leaned closer. Ma'am, just confirming, do we continue full service after 9? Leah looked up. Why wouldn't you? Well, the event manager said the final payment authorization hasn't gone through yet. Leah nodded. That's correct. You'll have an answer before then. The kid hesitated. Understood, ma'am. As he walked away, Leah checked her watch. 7:46 p.m. The night was moving exactly on schedule. The speeches rolled on. Every toast mentioned Ava's grace and strength, not a word about loyalty, gratitude, or the people who'd helped her climb. Leah had been in enough tactical briefings to recognize propaganda when she heard it. By the time dessert was served, even the music felt artificial, a background hum meant to distract from the growing tension. The staff moved efficiently, but their glances toward Leah were more frequent now. They knew who signed the checks. So did the venue manager. Leah leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms lightly. Control wasn't about cutting power. It was about knowing exactly when to flip the switch. The moment came during the pre-toast silence, that collective breath before the next spectacle. Leah saw the signal, the event coordinator's subtle gesture to confirm the next payment before the official toast began. She stayed still. She let the silence linger. Across the room, the coordinator looked at her, uncertain. Leah gave a small, deliberate shake of her head. Not yet. Within seconds, whispers started among the staff. A catering lead left the floor to make a call. The pianist glanced nervously toward the event team. None of the guests noticed, not yet, but Leah could feel the shift, that subtle ripple of confusion that precedes every breakdown. From her seat, she watched Ava stand with her husband at the head table, smiling for photographers. Everything looked perfect. The illusion was holding. Leah picked up her glass, took one slow sip, and smiled to herself. Because the thing about control is that it isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, precise, and absolutely unshakable. And at that moment, in a ballroom filled with money, ego, and performance, the only person in full control was the woman sitting at table 22, the one everyone thought didn't belong. The clinking of silverware faded into the background as Leah watched the performance unfold. The Whitford's guests looked like extras from a high-budget commercial, every laugh rehearsed, every gesture calibrated for the cameras. The ballroom shimmered under soft amber light, and the scent of imported orchids floated through the air like expensive anesthesia. She'd seen battlefields cleaner than this. At first glance, it looked like Harmony champagne, designer dresses, polite conversation, but Leah could see the cracks beneath the polish. The tension wasn't just in the air. It was in the posture of people who spent their lives pretending they didn't care what anyone thought. Every smile was a transaction, every compliment an investment. Leah leaned back in her chair, quietly observing the social choreography. It reminded her of briefings with foreign diplomats, everyone smiling while trying to read the other side's weakness. The difference was, these people didn't even know there was a war going on. Across the room, Ava moved like she was floating, arm in arm with her husband, the perfect image of a bride who descended beyond her origins. Leah could recognize it instantly, the subtle exhaustion behind Ava's expression, the way she kept glancing toward the Whitfords for approval. It wasn't happiness. It was performance anxiety. A man at Leah's table leaned toward her. "So, which side of the family are you from?" he asked in a friendly, clueless tone. "The side that paid for the wedding," Leah said, without looking up. He laughed, assuming she was joking. "Ah, good one." She smiled faintly. "Yeah, hilarious." When he turned away, Leah's phone buzzed. A notification from her bank confirmed the pending transfer reminder, $520,000, still waiting for authorization. She swiped it away without hesitation. Timing was everything. From the head table, Ava's laughter rose again, but this time Leah noticed something else. Evan's mother whispering something into her husband's ear while glancing toward Leah's corner. Then came the sidelong looks from a few other guests. The whispers spread like static through a radio channel. Leah had seen that signal pattern before. It was the kind of low-level gossip that could move through an entire platoon before lunch. She didn't need to guess the topic. Ava had probably told them something, a convenient story to explain away the odd sister from Ohio. Maybe she'd said Leah was staff, or a distant cousin, or just someone helping with logistics. It didn't really matter. The lie had already done its work. The first open insult came disguised as politeness. A middle-aged woman in a pearl necklace approached Leah with a smile that could have cut glass. "You must be Leah." Ava mentioned, "You run a, what was it, supply business?" "That's right," Leah said. "How fascinating," the woman continued. "My husband runs a hedge fund. Very similar, I suppose, managing people, operations, resources." Leah nodded. "Except when I screw up, people bleed. When he screws up, people sue." The woman blinked. "Oh." Then she laughed too loudly. "You have such a blunt sense of humor." "I earned it," Leah said, finishing her drink. The woman quickly excused herself. Leah didn't mind. Conversations built on pretense had always bored her. The band started playing a slow song, and the couples moved to the dance floor. Leah noticed how Ava's new husband, Evan, kept one hand in his pocket while holding her, like he was more interested in posing than dancing. They looked good together, but something about it felt wrong. Leah had seen real love before, the kind that survives storms and loss. This wasn't it. This was branding. As they twirled, photographers circled them like vultures with cameras. Every flash captured the illusion. The perfect couple. The flawless evening. The fairy tale. It was the kind of moment people spent years constructing and seconds destroying. A voice broke her focus. "You must be Captain Donovan." Leah turned. A man in his late 50s stood behind her square shoulders, polished shoes, the kind of guy who'd spent his life in boardrooms. He extended a hand. "Richard Pollard. I'm Evan's godfather." Leah shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." "I just wanted to say thank you," he said. "Ava's told us how much you've done for her. Financing the wedding, supporting her through school, it's admirable." Leah studied his expression. It wasn't mocking or pitying. It was genuine, which made it even stranger. "I didn't do it for admiration," she said. "I didn't think you did," he replied. "You did it because that's what family does." Leah tilted her head slightly. "You seem like one of the few people here who believes that." Pollard smiled. "Old-fashioned, I guess. You'd be surprised how many people forget where they come from once they start collecting last names with Roman numerals." She liked him instantly. It reminded her that not everyone in this room was blind to the hypocrisy. But then Ava's voice carried across the hall louder now, laughing too hard at something Evan's mother said. Leah caught one phrase clearly. "Oh, she's just helping with coordination tonight." Pollard's expression changed. Uncomfortable. "I think I'll grab another drink." he said quietly, before walking off. Leah's jaw tightened. So that was it. Ava had made it official. In front of everyone, she'd turned her own sister into hired help. For a moment, Leah just sat there, letting the realization sink in. No anger, no shouting, just clarity. She'd spent her life in environments where one bad decision could cost lives. She didn't act on emotion. She calculated. She looked down at her phone, the pending payment notification glowing faintly like a fuse waiting to be lit. She didn't touch it. Not yet. She wasn't going to detonate the evening halfway through. Let Ava have her perfect night. Let her soak in every ounce of false praise before reality crushed it beneath its own weight. A waiter approached with a tray. More champagne, ma'am. Leah shook her head. I'll stick with water. He nodded and moved on. Leah's reflection shimmered in her glass, calm, focused, detached. She didn't look like a woman on the edge of losing control. She looked like someone waiting for orders only she could give. At 8:15, the first sign of real tension appeared. The event coordinator whispered to the manager, who glanced at her phone and frowned. Leah didn't have to guess. They were checking the payment status. Good. Let them worry. Meanwhile, Ava was radiant under the spotlight, taking photos, posing with guests. Every move calculated, every smile for show. Leah recognized the mask she'd worn it herself during command briefings after losing soldiers, when the only way to keep morale alive was to pretend nothing was wrong. The difference was, Ava wasn't covering grief. She was covering shame. Leah stood and walked toward the hallway. Her boots clicked softly against the marble floor. She paused by the glass wall and looked back at the celebration. The music, the laughter, the carefully constructed dream, all of it resting on a foundation of her money, her effort, her silence. Control wasn't just about withholding. It was about patience. And patience, Leah knew, always ends the same way, with precision. As she adjusted her cufflinks, she caught sight of her reflection steady, composed, and unrecognizable to anyone who'd ever underestimated her. Inside, Ava lifted her glass to prepare for the next toast, unaware that the balance of power in the room had already shifted. Leah didn't need a microphone to make her point. She just needed to wait for the right moment and the right silence. The band switched from jazz to a slow orchestral number as servers cleared plates and topped off champagne flutes. Leah stayed seated, her back straight, her eyes calm but calculating. She could feel the weight of the night tightening, like a rope being pulled from both ends. The air carried that quiet pressure before something snaps. She'd been in this kind of silence before, in convoys before ambushes, in negotiation rooms before someone made a mistake they couldn't take back. It was always the same. The confident ones talked too loud. The nervous ones smiled too much. And the ones in control? They waited. Across the ballroom, Ava rose from her seat at the head table, glowing under the chandelier light. Her husband, Evan, squeezed her hand, and she flashed the perfect smile she'd practiced for months. The chatter died down as the microphone was passed to her. Good evening, everyone, Ava began, her voice smooth and bright. Before we continue this celebration, I just want to thank you all for being here to witness what's truly the happiest day of my life. Polite applause followed. Leah took a sip of water, watching without expression. Ava's voice carried with a strange confidence, not warmth, but performance. Tonight isn't just about love, she continued. It's about family. The Whitfords have welcomed me with such grace and generosity. I can't thank them enough for showing me what it really means to belong. There it was, the word, belong, the kind of word people use when they've spent their whole life running from where they came from. Ava smiled toward her in-laws. And of course, I want to thank the people who made tonight possible. The Whitford family, our incredible planner Chloe, and everyone who worked so hard to make this dream come true. Leah's glass stopped halfway to her lips. Everyone. The word was deliberate, too smooth to be a mistake. A guest at the next table whispered, "Didn't her sister help too?" Ava heard it. She glanced quickly in Leah's direction, not long enough to acknowledge her, just enough to control the damage. "Oh, and of course, Leah," she said lightly, as though remembering an afterthought. "She's been amazing helping with logistics." Laughter rippled through the tables. Someone clapped like it was a joke. Leah set her glass down without looking away. Ava didn't see it, but Evan did. His expression shifted slightly curiosity, maybe worry. The man had no idea what kind of woman he'd just married. Ava wasn't done. We had so many moving parts, deliveries, budgets, coordination. It's been a challenge, she said, turning back to the crowd. But we managed it beautifully, didn't we? The crowd cheered. Leah didn't move. Ava raised her glass. So here's to family both old and new, and to the future we're building together. Leah could almost hear the cracks forming beneath the applause. The Whitfords clinked glasses with practiced grace, oblivious to the quiet shift in the room. But Leah noticed the small things, the waitstaff pausing by the door, the event manager standing near the wall checking her phone, the subtle tension among the service crew who knew whose name was on the contracts. Leah smiled faintly. No need for words yet. As the applause faded, Evan's father stood. "A beautiful speech, Ava," he said, taking the mic. "And now, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to offer a toast of my own." Leah folded her arms. "Here it comes." He turned toward the audience. "When my son first introduced Ava, I saw in her something we rarely find these days: grace, ambition, and the kind of strength that can't be bought." The crowd murmured approvingly. Leah almost laughed. "Can't be bought? Try telling that to the $500,000 budget," he went on. "Ava has shown us what it means to honor family, to rise above circumstances, and to carry herself with dignity and pride." Leah's jaw tightened, but she kept her face blank. "And we must also thank the man who raised her to be this extraordinary woman," he said. "A man whose values clearly shaped her character, whose influence guided her every step." Then he turned and lifted his glass toward a tall, silver-haired stranger sitting 2 tables away. "To Mr. Richard Montgomery," he announced, "a father every family would be proud to claim." Applause erupted. Guests rose to their feet. Cameras flashed. Ava smiled through tears, mouthing thank you toward the stranger. Leah didn't clap. She didn't move. She simply watched the man, polished, well-dressed, looking utterly lost in the spotlight, raise his glass with confusion and mild panic. The applause grew louder, filling the room with an energy Leah could feel vibrating in her chest. The words hit like a rifle shot. "A father every family would be proud to claim." Her hand found the edge of the table. Steady pressure. Controlled breathing. A woman near her turned and whispered, "Isn't that sweet? Her father's here." Leah didn't bother answering. The humiliation wasn't the kind that burned fast. It was slow, deliberate, like a knife pressed just hard enough to draw blood without ending it. Ava hadn't simply erased her, she'd replaced her. The applause died down. Evan's father continued, "To Ava's father for giving us this remarkable young woman." Leah's fingers brushed her phone under the table, unlocking it silently. One tap, pending transfer. She hovered over, cancel. The thought of it flashed through her mind like lightning. One action, and this entire illusion collapses. But she waited. She wanted Ava to see her before the truth hit. From across the room, Ava caught her sister's gaze, a single, split-second glance that said more than any speech ever could. Leah saw the flicker of fear in Ava's eyes, that flash of recognition that she'd gone too far. Leah leaned back, folding her hands calmly. No raised voice, no visible anger. Just precision. She turned to the waiter beside her. "Tell the manager I'll speak with her after this toast." The waiter nodded nervously and disappeared. Up front, the applause swelled again. Ava stepped forward to hug the imposter father. Guests cheered. Someone shouted, "What a beautiful family." Leah could feel her pulse steady. Years of discipline, of restraint, of knowing exactly when to strike, all of it came together in this one surreal moment. She rose quietly, smoothing her jacket. No one noticed at first. The attention was all on the stage, the glowing bride, the perfect illusion. But the staff noticed. The photographer noticed. The venue manager, standing by the door with her phone in hand, froze as Leah approached. "Miss Donovan," she whispered, "is everything all right?" Leah met her eyes. "Not yet." The manager nodded once, understanding more than most people in that room ever could. The lights glimmered, the orchestra swelled, and Ava laughed through her tears, a sound that would have broken Leah once, years ago. Now, it only hardened her resolve. She reached into her pocket and unfolded the contract summary, the one every vendor had signed, her name printed neatly across the bottom of each page. Every dollar, every detail, every decision, all of it hers. The Whitfords thought they ran the show. Ava thought she'd buried her past. But in that room full of glass and gold, the only person holding real power was the one no one wanted to look at, the soldier who knew that silence, when used right, could destroy an empire. The air in the ballroom had shifted just slightly, like pressure before a storm. The applause was still fading when Leah walked forward, her heels clicking in steady rhythm against the marble floor. Heads began to turn. Guests assumed she was part of the event staff coming to adjust the mic or refill something. None of them expected her to take the microphone from the father of the groom. Leah's voice was calm when she spoke. "Excuse me." "Right." The microphone caught the edge of her tone, that steady, grounded command that came from years of speaking in tents filled with soldiers, not champagne flutes. The sound cut through the crowd like a blade through fabric. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she continued. "But before we keep celebrating this perfect family portrait, I'd like to clarify a few things." A few polite chuckles rippled through the room, the kind people use when they're not sure if something is a joke. Ava's face went pale. "Leah," she started, stepping forward, but Leah held up a hand. "No need to worry, Ava. I'll keep this short. You see, there's been a small misunderstanding tonight." She turned toward the crowd, scanning them with the same composure she used to scan a tactical map. Apparently, someone here was kind enough to give credit to a man named Richard Montgomery for raising the bride, for teaching her strength, dignity, and grace. Will Richard, the bewildered stranger, looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. Leah gave him a polite nod. "Sir, I'm sure you're a fine man, but you and I both know you didn't raise Ava. You didn't pay her tuition, or her rent, or send her care packages when she couldn't afford groceries. You didn't stay up nights working double shifts to keep her out of foster care. You didn't write her letters during deployment telling her she was going to make it. That was me." The ballroom went silent, the kind of silence that feels too heavy to breathe in. Ava's husband looked at her, confused. "Is that true?" he whispered, but she didn't answer. Leah continued, her tone steady but soft. "For those of you wondering who I am, I'm Captain Leah Donovan, U.S. Army Logistics Corps, retired after 20 years of service. I'm also Ava's only sister, the one she apparently forgot to mention tonight." A murmur rippled through the crowd, spreading faster than any rumor could. Leah didn't need to look at her sister to know Ava's face had gone white. "I financed this wedding," Leah went on. "Every flower, every light, every bottle of champagne. I did it because I believed in family, because I thought loyalty meant something. But apparently, in this world, loyalty comes second to image." Judith Whitford, the groom's mother, stood abruptly, her voice tight. "I think this is highly inappropriate." Leah turned to her, calm as ever. "Ma'am, you're absolutely right. It's inappropriate. But so is pretending someone else's life story, just because it photographs better." Gasps scattered through the audience like sparks. "I was supposed to stay quiet," Leah said, her gaze sweeping the room. "To sit at the back and smile while being introduced as the help. To let my own sister erase me so she could fit in with people who wouldn't last a day outside their comfort zone. But I don't do quiet. Not anymore." Although, someone in the back whispered, "Is this real?" Another replied, "It has to be. Look at her face." Leah let the silence linger long enough to sting, not long enough to lose momentum. Years of briefings and debriefings had taught her the power of pacing. She could control a room better than most commanders. Ava finally found her voice. "Leah, please," she said, trembling. "You're embarrassing me." Leah tilted her head slightly. "Embarrassing you? I think you've already managed that yourself." Ava took a step closer, whispering harshly. "You don't understand. These people aren't your family," Leah cut in. "They'll drop you the second your last name stops benefiting them. I was the one who never left, remember?" Evan rose slowly beside his wife, his expression conflicted. "Is what she's saying true? Did your sister pay for all this?" Ava didn't answer. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. Leah didn't need them. "Don't blame her," she said to him. "She just learned what happens when you spend too long living in someone else's idea of perfect." The microphone caught the faint tremor in her voice, not from weakness, but from restraint. "I don't regret helping her. I regret thinking that money could fix character. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some stared at their plates. Others watched with morbid fascination. It was the kind of scene that would replay in whispers for months. Leah set the microphone down on the table, not thrown, not dropped, just placed carefully, as if she were setting down a final piece of evidence. "I'll be in touch with the vendors," she said, turning to the event coordinator near the wall. "The remaining payment is suspended until further notice." The woman nodded quickly, eyes wide. Then Leah looked back at her sister one last time. Ava's mascara had started to smudge, her perfect posture broken. For a second, Leah almost felt sorry for her almost. "You wanted to erase me from your story," Leah said quietly. "Congratulations, I'm officially gone from it." She turned toward the exit, moving through the stunned silence like a general walking off the battlefield. After victory, not triumphant, just resolved. But before she reached the door, she paused. Her voice carried one last time, calm and clear. "For the record," she said, glancing over her shoulder, "family isn't who you're born into. It's who stands by you when the world stops clapping." Then she handed her glass to a passing waiter, nodded politely, and walked out. The doors shut behind her, leaving 400 guests staring at the wreckage of perfection. No one moved. No one knew what to say. Ava stood frozen, still holding her glass, as the orchestra faltered mid-song. The silence stretched longer than any speech that night. The photographers lowered their cameras. The lights flickered once as if even the mansion itself didn't want to bear witness to what had just happened. And somewhere outside, the steady sound of Leah's boots on the gravel driveway faded into the night, not retreating, but simply leaving a place that had never deserved her in the first place. Inside, the celebration stumbled forward out of reflex, but everyone knew it was over. The illusion had cracked wide open. No one noticed the event coordinator slipping out to make a phone call, or the line of catering staff quietly setting down trays. The show might still be on paper, but the operation had already been shut down by its commander. Leah didn't have to stay to see it collapse. She'd already executed the plan perfectly. The night air outside was sharp and clean, a welcome contrast to the suffocating sweetness of that ballroom. Leah walked toward her truck without looking back. Years of military discipline had taught her that once a decision was made, hesitation only made the fallout worse. She opened her phone, found the transfer authorization, and tapped cancel. No warning, no hesitation, just one decisive motion. Inside the Whitford estate, the consequences began almost instantly. The event coordinator, still standing near the stage, received the notification first. Her earpiece buzzed as her payment dashboard refreshed. Final transfer declined. Her throat tightened. She whispered into her headset, "All staff hold service." Repeat, "Hold service until further confirmation." Within seconds, the system that had made the night run like clockwork began to grind to a halt. Waiters stopped mid-step. The bartenders lowered their bottles. The lighting crew froze by their control panels. It was a silent cascade, an operational breakdown visible only to those who knew what to look for. Evan Whitford's father, oblivious to the chaos at first, raised his glass again. "Well, that was certainly dramatic," he said with a stiff laugh. "But let's not allow one misunderstanding to ruin a perfect night." He didn't notice the caterer quietly whispering to a colleague, or the string quartet exchanging uncertain looks as their payment app flashed a red alert. Judith Whitford turned toward her husband. "Why did the music stop?" "I don't know," he said, signaling to the band. "Keep playing." But the violinist shook her head apologetically. "We've just been instructed to pause until authorization clears." "Authorization?" Judith repeated. "What authorization?" The event coordinator tried to step in quietly, but her microphone caught just enough to carry across the speakers. "Ma'am, there seems to be an issue with the final payment." The ballroom erupted in murmurs before she could finish. Guests leaned across tables, whispering, eyes darting. Someone near the back muttered, "Did she say payment?" Ava stood motionless, staring at the coordinator. "What do you mean, issue?" The woman swallowed hard. The remaining funds over $500,000 were withheld. The account holder canceled the transfer. Ava's face drained of color. "That's impossible. It must be a mistake." The coordinator glanced toward her tablet. "It's not. The payment was canceled by Captain Leah Donovan." A one. The name hung in the air like a detonated grenade. Judith's voice cracked like glass. Your sister was the financier? Evan looked at Ava with disbelief. You didn't tell me that. Ava tried to breathe, but the words came out like a gasp. I was going to. It wasn't supposed to matter. It matters when the person paying for the wedding just shut it down, he snapped. The lights flickered slightly, not from power failure, but because the lighting engineer had already packed his gear. The caterers began quietly removing trays, unsure whether to continue serving unpaid. One waiter tripped over a cord as the orchestra tried to resume playing, creating a brief, awkward feedback hum that cut through the rising chatter. It was chaos, but a controlled kind, the kind Leah understood intimately. She wasn't inside to see it, but she could have predicted every move with perfect accuracy. Her career had been built on supply chains and timing. Pull the right resource at the right second, and the entire structure collapses without you lifting a finger. Ava tried to take control. Everyone, please, just stay calm, she said, forcing a laugh. There must be some misunderstanding. We'll get this sorted in a minute. Her voice trembled halfway through. The guests didn't buy it. Someone whispered loudly enough for others to hear. She lied about her sister. Another added, she pretended to be self-made. Typical. It spread fast. Within minutes, the word fraud started floating between tables, mixed with pity and amusement. The Whitfords' expressions shifted from confusion to visible disgust. Judith stepped close, her voice low and sharp. You made our family look ridiculous, Ava. You said everything was handled. I did handle it, Ava hissed. It's just she's trying to humiliate me. Evan's tone was cold now. She didn't have to try very hard. Ava turned to him, desperate. Evan, please. But he was already walking away from her, his mother in tow. The photographers hesitated before following. No one wanted to capture the fall of a Whitford bride in real time. The chatter grew louder. Guests started leaving in small groups, murmuring polite excuses as they backed toward the doors. The ballroom, once glittering with light and laughter, began to look like a set being dismantled after filming a fake show. Ava stood in the middle of it all. Perfect dress, perfect hair, and the hollow eyes of someone realizing that perfection had a cost she could no longer afford. Meanwhile, at the far end of the driveway, Leah sat in her truck, watching faint flashes of light from the ballroom windows. Her phone vibrated non-stop missed calls, texts, voicemails. She ignored them. She didn't need to hear the panic to know it was happening. Her hands rested steady on the steering wheel. It wasn't triumph she felt, not satisfaction either. Just clarity. When you spend years keeping things running in the worst conditions in heat, chaos, and gunfire, you learn that collapse isn't a tragedy. It's simply what happens when the system stops deserving your effort. She looked up at the mansion one last time. From where she sat, the party lights looked dimmer now, the sounds muffled. The image-perfect life Ava had built was disintegrating in real time, and it wasn't Leah who destroyed it. Ava had done that herself. Leah had simply stopped holding it together. Her phone buzzed again, Ava calling this time. Leah let it ring out. A few seconds later, another message appeared. Please, don't do this. I'll fix it. Leah stared at it for a long moment before locking the screen. Inside the ballroom, the chaos was complete. The staff began packing up. The music stopped altogether. The Whitfords' guests exited in a procession of awkward silence and luxury perfume. By the time the last car left the estate, Ava was standing barefoot on the marble floor, surrounded by melting candles and half-eaten desserts. Her husband didn't come back. Her mother-in-law refused to look at her. And the event coordinator, still holding her clipboard, said softly, "We'll send an updated invoice once the matter is resolved, Mrs. Whitford." And Ava nodded numbly, staring at the dark doorway where her sister had walked out less than an hour ago. The sound of laughter from the departing guests echoed faintly through the open doors. Somewhere, in the distance, thunder rolled. Leah's truck headlights cut through the night as she drove away, steady and unhurried. She didn't look back, because she didn't need to. She knew exactly what was left behind. A wedding that had cost nearly $1 million and a reputation that couldn't be repaired with any amount of money. It wasn't revenge in the cinematic sense. There were no explosions, no shouting, no tears. Just silence, the same kind she'd learned to weaponize long ago. And in that silence, somewhere between the rain beginning to fall and the sound of her tires on wet pavement, Leah Donovan allowed herself the smallest smile, not of victory, but of release. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't holding the line for anyone but herself. The morning after the wedding was gray and quiet, the kind of weather that matched the hangover of an entire community that had celebrated too loudly and believed too easily. Leah woke early, as she always did, but this time there was no mission briefing, no orders to review, no phone buzzing with logistics updates, just stillness and a thin film of satisfaction she didn't care to examine too closely. Her coffee maker hissed softly in the corner of her kitchen. She watched the steam rise, folded her arms, and stared out the window toward the rain-slicked street. Her phone was face down on the counter, but she could still feel it pulsing with missed calls. Ava, the Whitfords, journalists, people she didn't even know. The story had already spread. It started locally, of course. The wedding that stopped mid-ceremony. Then came the national gossip outlets. $1 million marriage meltdown. In Greenwich. They loved the irony, the perfect American fairy tale ruined by an unpaid invoice. No one knew the full truth, but everyone knew enough to make it viral. By mid-morning, Leah's name was trending in the least expected way. She wasn't the villain, she was the ghost behind the curtain, the mystery woman who had quietly pulled the plug on a spectacle of entitlement. The internet decided she was either a hero or a monster, depending on which headline you clicked. She ignored all of it. Her life had operated under scrutiny before, only then it was military briefings, not gossip columns. The pattern was the same. People always needed a villain, and they always needed a savior. Sometimes you were both. At 11, someone knocked on her door. 3 knocks, hesitant but insistent. She didn't need to look through the peephole. The rhythm was familiar. Ava stood outside, wearing sunglasses too big for her face and a jacket that looked borrowed. Her hair was tied back messily, and her voice cracked before she even spoke. "Can I come in?" Leah stepped aside without a word. Ava entered slowly, looking around like she didn't belong. The apartment was small, clean, organized in a way that only years of military life could explain. The faint scent of coffee and disinfectant lingered in the air. "I didn't know where else to go," Ava said, sitting down at the kitchen table. Her hands trembled slightly. "They're saying things online that aren't true. That I stole from you, that I lied about." "You did lie," Leah said evenly. Ava's mouth opened, then closed. "I didn't mean to. It just got out of hand." Leah leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Out of hand is when you forget to send a thank you note. What you did was deliberate." "I just wanted to fit in," Ava said softly. "For once in my life, I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere." Leah shook her head. "You already did. You just didn't like where that was." Ava pressed her palms together, staring at the table. "The Whitfords won't answer my calls. Evan moved out this morning. His mother told me to seek humility somewhere else." "That's poetic," Leah said, pouring herself another cup of coffee. "You should frame it." Ava flinched but didn't fight back. "I lost everything, Leah. My reputation, my marriage, my friends, they all think I'm some kind of fraud." Leah looked at her, calm but not cruel. "You built your life on pretending. Now you get to see what it's like when the pretending stops." Ava swallowed hard. "You wanted this. You wanted me to hurt." "Nah." "No," Leah said, sitting across from her. "I wanted you to learn. There's a difference." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was heavy, the kind of silence where truth sits between two people like a third presence neither can ignore. Finally, Ava said, "I can't even pay for the vendors. They're threatening lawsuits. The Whitfords said it's not their responsibility, because the contracts are in your name." Leah took a slow sip of her coffee. "Then it's mine to fix, and I'll fix it. But not for you." Ava looked up, startled. "What does that mean?" "It means I'll make sure the people who worked get paid. Because that's how honor works. You take care of your commitments even when others don't." Ava's eyes glistened. "You're still helping me. Even after all this." "I'm helping them," Leah said firmly. "You? You'll help yourself this time." The younger woman nodded, ashamed. "I don't even know where to start." "You start by working," Leah said. "And I don't mean influencer brand ambassador working. I mean actual work, earning something, standing for something." Ava nodded again, but the words didn't seem to sink in yet. Her entire posture screamed confusion. A person who had lived her whole life on performance suddenly stripped of an audience. Leah stood, grabbed a folder from the counter, and placed it in front of her. Inside were financial records, invoices, and termination notices for the event contracts. Each page was marked with Leah's signature. "This is what a mess looks like when you clean it properly," Leah said. "You'll learn how to manage it." Ava hesitated. "You want me to help with this?" Leah met her gaze. "You wanted to belong somewhere? Welcome to the real world, the one where things actually matter." The hours that followed were quiet but methodical. Leah walked Ava through the numbers, payments, cancellations, partial refunds. She spoke in the same calm tone she used when training junior officers. Clear, direct, no emotion wasted. Ava wrote notes, fumbled through terms she didn't understand, and slowly started to look less like a victim and more like someone trying to rebuild. By late afternoon, Ava closed the last file and exhaled shakily. "I don't deserve your help." "No," Leah said, "but you need it. And needing help isn't shameful. Pretending you don't, that's shameful. You." Ava nodded again, this time more genuinely. "I don't know how to fix what I did to you." "You can't," Leah said simply. "But you can do better from here on out." The words weren't comforting, but they were true, and somehow that was enough. Leah poured them both water, the rhythm of her movements grounding the room. Outside, the rain began again, tapping softly against the glass. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ava said, "Leah, would you ever let me work for you? At your company, I mean. I know it sounds ridiculous, but..." Leah didn't answer right away. She studied her sister, the same girl she'd carried through years of chaos, now sitting across from her, stripped of ego, finally looking like herself again. "I don't hire family," Leah said at last. "It complicates things." Ava's expression fell, but Leah wasn't finished. "But I'll make an exception if you earn it. You start at the bottom, same as everyone else. Minimum pay, no favors, no shortcuts." Ava nodded eagerly. "I'll do it. I'll do anything." Leah didn't smile, but a trace of warmth entered her voice. "We'll see." She stood, rinsed her cup, and looked out the window again. The rain was heavier now, washing the city clean. Behind her, Ava quietly organized the folder, aligning the papers perfectly, an almost subconscious imitation of Leah's precision. It wasn't redemption yet. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was motion forward. Real, earned. And for the first time since the wedding, Leah didn't feel like she was watching a performance. She felt like she was watching her sister wake up. Monday came like any other workday, early, cold, and brutally honest. Leah was already in her office at 6:30 a.m., coffee in hand, reading reports from the logistics division. By 7:55, the door opened, and Ava stepped in wearing the company's gray polo shirt and khaki pants, the uniform for entry-level staff. No makeup, no jewelry, just a nervous half-smile and a notebook clutched too tightly in her hands. "You're early," Leah said without looking up from her computer. "You said 8, Ava replied quietly. "So I came at 7:30. I didn't want to be late." Leah glanced up. "Good instinct. Sit down." Einand. Ava sat, back straight, waiting for direction the way a new recruit does before their first drill. Leah let her wait a few seconds, not as a power move, but because she wanted to see how long Ava could sit in silence without fidgeting. She lasted longer than Leah expected. "You'll start in residential services," Leah said finally. "It's mostly scheduling maintenance calls, coordinating field techs, and handling customer complaints. It's not glamorous, but it's the backbone of the operation." "I understand," Ava said, though her voice wavered slightly. Leah raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because understand means you know this isn't temporary. No special treatment. No one here reports to you except through proper chain of command. You mess up, you own it." "I know," Ava said. "I'm not asking for favors. I just want to learn how things actually work." Leah leaned back, studying her sister. "You're going to find out real fast that work isn't about looking busy or sounding smart. It's about delivering. You either get it done, or you don't." Ava nodded. "Then I'll get it done." Leah handed her a company badge clipped to a lanyard. "Welcome to Donovan Logistics." For the first 2 weeks, Leah barely saw her sister outside of quick hallway glimpses. Ava's supervisor, a woman named Dana Park, didn't go easy on her. Dana ran the residential services desk like a forward operating base, every call logged, every issue tracked, no excuses. At first, Ava struggled. She spoke too formally with customers, hesitated when techs shouted updates over the radio, and once transferred a call to the wrong department, causing an entire maintenance crew to show up at the wrong address. Leah heard about it from Dana at the next operations meeting. "She's trying," Leah said simply. "She's not used to being ignored," Dana replied. "But she doesn't complain. I'll give her that." By week 3, Ava was improving. She'd stopped flinching when someone raised their voice on the radio. She'd learned how to handle angry customers without panicking. Once, Leah overheard her on a call saying, "Ma'am, I can't fix what already broke, but I can make sure it doesn't stay broken. That's a promise." It sounded simple, but Leah recognized the shift. That sentence carried weight, the same kind of steady accountability she'd spent years drilling into her soldiers. After hours, Ava stayed late to clean up spreadsheets, learning how the dispatch system worked. One night, Leah found her still at her desk after everyone had gone home, eyes red from the computer screen. "You don't get extra points for staying late," Leah said. "I know," Ava replied, closing her laptop. "I just didn't want to leave things half-finished." Leah nodded slightly. That's how it starts. Slowly, the rest of the staff warmed to her. They stopped seeing her as the boss's sister and started seeing her as another exhausted coworker trying to meet deadlines. When a delivery truck broke down during a storm one Friday night, Ava volunteered to stay until the issue was resolved. She coordinated emergency rerouting with precision and calm, earning an approving nod from the night manager. Leah didn't say anything the next morning, but she left a small note on Ava's desk. "Good call on Route 7. That's how professionals handle chaos." Ava kept the note folded in her wallet. The months that followed changed her in quiet, steady ways. She stopped talking about image and status. She started carrying a toolbox in her car, just in case one of the field teams needed a hand. When a water line burst in a customer's basement and the techs were delayed, she waited in herself to shut off the main valve. Her shoes were ruined, her hair soaked, but when Leah saw the report later that night, she smiled to herself. Ava was starting to understand something Leah had always known. Dignity doesn't come from applause, it comes from follow-through. By the 6th month, Ava had been promoted to assistant project coordinator. The raise was modest, but the recognition mattered more. Dana, who once doubted her, now trusted her to lead small client accounts. One afternoon, Leah called Ava into her office. "Sit," Leah said. "You've been doing solid work." "Thank you," Ava replied. "But that's not why you're here," Leah continued. "I need your help on something bigger, a government logistics bid we're pursuing. It's competitive and complicated. You'll assist the proposal team." Ava blinked. "You're trusting me with that?" "I'm trusting you to follow orders," Leah said, almost smiling. "Don't let it get to your head." Working on the bid was like stepping into another world. The stakes were higher, the deadlines brutal. Leah watched quietly as Ava learned to navigate the bureaucracy, negotiate schedules, and handle the mountain of paperwork that came with federal contracts. When the proposal was finally submitted, the entire team gathered in the break room. Leah thanked everyone. And for once, Ava didn't stand in the back, she stood shoulder to shoulder with them, hands still ink-stained from marking blueprints. Later that night, Leah found her sister on the rooftop of the office building, looking out at the city lights. "Feels different when you build something yourself, doesn't it?" Leah said. Ava nodded. "It feels real, like I actually earned it." Leah stood beside her, both of them quiet for a while. "I never thought I could do this," Ava admitted. "Not after everything that happened. I thought I'd always be that girl who messed up her wedding and lost everything." "End." "You're not that girl anymore," Leah said simply. "You're the woman who got up and started again." Ava smiled faintly. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," Leah replied. "But the right things never are." Down below, a company truck rolled past, headlights flashing briefly across the Donovan Logistics sign on the building. It was late, but work continued just as it always had. Ava turned toward her sister. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not giving up on me." Leah met her chaza. "Don't thank me, just keep showing up." Ava nodded, eyes steady. no longer the fragile woman from the wedding night. She looked tired, grounded, and alive. The city wind picked up, carrying the faint hum of traffic and the smell of rain. Leah looked out over the skyline and felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace, the kind that comes from knowing every piece was finally where it should be. And though no one said it aloud, both sisters knew this wasn't a fresh start. It was something harder, better, a rebuild, one earned decision at a time. The next summer came quietly, without fanfare or headlines. The chaos of the past year had faded into something distant, still remembered, but no longer sharp enough to cut. At Donovan Logistics, business was steady, contracts were strong, and Leah had found her rhythm again. Discipline, order, and results, that was her language, the same as it had been in uniform. But what surprised her most was how naturally Ava had adapted to that language. She'd grown leaner, steadier, more deliberate. The nervousness that once shadowed her movements was gone, replaced by calm precision. She no longer dressed for attention, she dressed to work. The girl who once chased acceptance was now building credibility, one report, one project, one long day at a time. By the time the company secured its government logistics bid, Ava was no longer an assistant. She was a project coordinator overseeing a small team of field supervisors, her own people, her own schedule, her own results to defend. Leah never announced the promotion publicly. She just slid the paperwork across the desk one afternoon and said, "You've earned this. Don't waste it." Ava didn't. She showed up before sunrise. She handled breakdowns, weather delays, and supply issues with quiet authority. She still made mistakes, but now she fixed them before anyone else had to. The same people who once whispered about the boss's sister now came to her for advice. Respect didn't come from her last name anymore. It came from performance. Leah watched the transformation with a kind of quiet pride she didn't want to admit to. She'd seen soldiers turn themselves around after years of bad decisions. But this was different. This was personal. One Thursday afternoon, as the team wrapped up a warehouse project, Leah stopped by Ava's worksite unannounced. The air smelled of sawdust and oil. Ava stood in a hard hat, clipboard in hand, instructing a vendor about load distribution. Her voice was steady, her instructions clear. When she noticed Leah watching from the side, she smiled a real smile, not one rehearsed for approval. "Everything's on schedule," Ava said, brushing dust from her sleeves. "Shipment should be ready by 1800. "Good work," Leah said. "You sound like you've done this before." "I do. I've had a decent teacher," Ava replied, a trace of humor in her tone. They stood side by side for a moment, watching the crew secure crates. Leah caught herself studying her sister's posture, the way she held herself, shoulders back, jaw set, eyes focused. She looked like someone who belonged in charge. Later that evening, back at headquarters, Leah found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a handwritten note. "1 year ago, I destroyed everything you built for me. You didn't have to forgive me, but you did something harder. You gave me a chance to earn it back. I can't undo the past, but I can honor it. Thank you for teaching me what strength really looks like. Ava." Leah read it twice, then tucked it into the top drawer beside her military commendation pins. Some things didn't need framing, they just needed keeping. That weekend, she invited Ava to dinner, not at a restaurant, but at Leah's house, the same modest home she'd lived in for years. Ava brought takeout instead of flowers. They sat on the porch with paper plates and beer, the air warm and full of the low buzz of summer cicadas. "You ever think about the wedding?" Ava asked suddenly, her tone hesitant. "Sometimes," Leah said. "Mostly when I need a reminder of why I don't do catering halls." Ava laughed softly, then grew quiet again. "I've never told you how bad it got after that night. The humiliation, the gossip, the people who stopped returning calls. It felt like everyone I'd built my life around vanished overnight." "They didn't vanish," Leah said. "They just stopped pretending." Ava nodded. "Yeah. Turns out pretending is exhausting anyway." They sat for a while in comfortable silence. Then Ava said, "I used to think forgiveness was something you got by saying sorry enough times. But it's not, is it?" Leah shook her head. "No, forgiveness is a verb. You do it, every day. It's not a free pass. It's a choice to build something better." "Debu." Ava looked down at her bottle, twisting it slowly in her hand. "I don't know if I've earned yours yet." Leah's gaze softened. "You're earning it right now." For a while, The only sound was the distant hum of a freight train rolling past the edge of town. It was the kind of quiet that came after storms, not peace exactly, but recovery. Later that night, as they cleared the table, Ava stopped at the doorway. You know, I used to be embarrassed by who I was, by who we were. The uniforms, the grease stains, the small house. But now I get it. Leah raised an eyebrow. Get what? That what you built was real, Ava said. It wasn't about status or image. It was about earning everything you have. I used to think that was boring. Now I think it's the only thing that matters. Leah smiled faintly. You're late to the party, but I'll take it. Ava laughed, then hugged her awkward at first, then genuine, the kind of hug that said more than words ever could. Leah didn't pull away this time. The following Monday, Leah called a staff meeting to announce new project expansions. Ava stood beside her as she outlined the company's next steps: bigger contracts, new partnerships, a national logistics certification. When Leah finished, she turned to Ava. This company doesn't exist because of me alone, she said. It exists because people here believe in doing things the right way. And sometimes, that belief has to be relearned. I've watched people rebuild themselves from nothing. That's what real strength looks like. Ava didn't say anything, but the room's quiet respect said enough. After the meeting, Leah stepped outside into the afternoon Sunday. The company's trucks were lined up neatly in the lot, gleaming under the light. Everything she'd built, every hour, every dollar, every sleepless night, stood solid and functional, like a living extension of her will. Ava joined her outside, holding 2 coffees. She handed one to Leah. Thought you'd need this, she said. Leah accepted it, sipping with a smirk. Still can't make it without sugar, huh? Working on it, Ava said, kind of like everything else. They stood together watching one of the trucks pull out, the company logo bold on its side, Donovan Logistics, built on honor. Ava had helped design that tagline after a brainstorming session weeks earlier. At first, Leah thought it sounded too sentimental. Now she realized it was perfect. Ava followed her gaze and said quietly, You ever think about how weird it is? How something that used to be a name on paper is now trucks, people, jobs, a whole life? Leah nodded slowly. That's the thing about building something real. It keeps going even after you stop pushing. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the lot. For once, Leah didn't think about deadlines or operations or the past. She just stood there, side by side with her sister, watching the tangible proof of what rebuilding really meant. Ava set her cup down on the railing, eyes steady. You know, I don't think I ever told you this, but I'm proud of you. Leah gave a small laugh. You're proud of me? Yeah, Ava said with a grin. Seems fair. You've been proud of me long enough for both of us. Leah didn't answer. She didn't need to. The sound of the truck engines faded down the highway, replaced by the quiet rhythm of the wind against the building, steady, grounded, and honest. Neither of them spoke again, but in that silence was everything they'd fought through. Betrayal, pride, consequence, and the slow, hard work of redemption. Not the kind that came with speeches or apologies. The kind you live, one choice at a time. And for the first time in years, Leah knew her family name finally meant something again. Not money, not power, but respect. The kind that can't be bought, borrowed, or faked. The kind you earn.